So joining us today in our Ask the Expert series, we have Jaap from Operational Change Management. And we were talking before, Jaap, and just getting into the topic right away, we wanted to talk about how specifically small businesses that are in either some sort of creation mode, in other words, they're creating something, they're building something, they're making something. This is a
Mhm.
specialty of yours. And so obviously those businesses that have that kind of background, you would be an ideal opportunity to be able to talk about. One of the things we talked about is systems and operational issues and things like that. So one of the biggest challenges we've seen, especially in the trades, um, is, as an example, we have a plumber and he started his own business and he's going well, but now he wants to grow the business. And so how does that individual, even if he's got a couple employees going and stuff, how do you help him kind of get to that next stage?
Yeah, no, Rob, that is a great question. And basically the answer is in the book behind me here, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. So Michael Gerber in this book, which originates from like 1986 or something, and which is still a bestseller, he describes very well, why a lot of businesses fail after a few years. So it is the plumbers that start a plumbing business and that initially, are very successful, and some of them are very successful, ever going on. But quite a few of them, they at one point they hit a ceiling. They can't grow further. And the challenge there is that a lot of these guys, they know everything about plumbing. They learn a little bit about business, but they don't know about enough about business to be able to grow this business. Um, and the main problem is that they don't know how to delegate accountability. So really, when you start as on your own, like myself, I'm self-employed. The plumber starts self-employed, and then at one point, he gets busy, so he starts to hire some helpers, apprentices, other plumbers that help him with the work that the company does. And when this grows, the owner, he's on the tools, but he also needs to do the books. He needs to do the selling. He needs to do the invoicing. He needs to do the buying, everything. And so the scope of work, is just growing and growing for an owner like this. And at one point, he finds himself getting up, at 3 o'clock in the morning, getting the day ready, the tools, the materials, the consumables, and everything, hitting the road with the guys, doing all the work, and then coming home in the evening, doing the invoicing, doing the buying, you know, doing the sales calls, yada 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 yada. And then at 12 o'clock he goes to bed. And of course, this is not sustainable. I don't really call this a business. I call this like you're self-employed with help. And so you have a business that is completely reliant on the owner's daily involvement in that business.
You are the business then at that point.
You are the business. Without you, nothing is going to happen. And that is an extremely common phenomenon. And that's one of the things that I see quite a bit, with my clients, and maybe not to the extreme extent, but absolutely, there's always a component of this. And so that's what I try. Well, no, that's what I help, my clients resolve. So what we do is we talk about, first of all, I take them through a three-step approach. If you want to know how I go about this,
Hmm.
um, three-step approach. So first of all, we want to know, what is your vision for this business? What is that you want to achieve? Do you have a big, hairy, audacious goal or a BHAG? And why? And in many cases, my clients, these business owners, they cannot tell me right off the bat, this is what I want. Usually the answer is like, yeah, I want to grow. How much? I don't know. Right? So it's vague ideas. And in this exercise, we try to nail this down to a very concrete plan, with dates, with specific numbers and that sort of things, but also understanding the why. Why do you want to grow this much, or why not? Is this the right, solution for you? Do
Yeah.
you understand the consequences? So understanding the future situation, the future state is important. Otherwise, we're just, going in circles. The second stage of then this first three-step approach is to understand the current situation, the current state of the business. And this starts off with, how does your organizational structure look like? Your org chart.
Right.
So most people probably know what an org chart looks like, but basically, it's a box at the top with your name as the business owner, the founder of the business. And then you got boxes on the, below there for, okay, who is managing marketing, sales, operations, HR, finance, IT, possibly other things. But basically every business needs those functions. And, when you have a big business, you have a name in all those boxes.
Mhm.
So that first exercise, how does your org chart look like? And this is where, I always talk about the difference between accountability and responsibility. And the difference between these two is critical when you try to draft up this org chart. So what is the difference? When you are responsible for a task, that task is yours to execute. When you are accountable for a task, it means that you need to make sure that that task happens. But whether you do it yourself or you delegate that to someone else, that's up to you. Basically, when you are accountable for something, you are accountable for the results, not so much the task itself. What happens very often, that's quite interesting, when we go through the exercise of drafting up the org chart, the owner will tell me that, well, it's Mary, who is accountable for marketing. But then when I ask, okay, how do you work with Mary? Do you tell her every morning and in the afternoon what she needs to do? Or does she know the mandate of marketing? The larger objective, what needs to be achieved, and she takes care of it. And then quite often the answer is like, well, basically I tell her what to do. So then I take Mary's name out of the box of marketing and I put the owner's name in there. Right. And then Mary basically just, is pushed down as a staff member of the marketing team. And so when we go through this exercise, instead of having different names in the boxes of all these functions, it's actually, the owner's name that ends up everywhere.
Mhm.
And so this is a very visual, sign that you have a business that is completely reliant on the owner. And this is quite common. So
Yeah.
doing the org chart is the very first step. The second step quite often is doing a process map. A process mapping exercise is where we visualize your main process. So step by step going through, okay, what is being done? At what point do you hand over work from one person to another? What tools are you using? Are you using paper, Excel, any CRM or ERP program or whatever it is? And in the situation, especially in the situation where this is a group brainstorm, which is preferred, when or while we are drafting this up, we're having all kinds of discussions around the weaknesses of this whole process. People will come up, yeah, this doesn't work. Oh, are you doing it this way? I do it differently. So we identify all kinds of weaknesses in the process. So org chart, process map, and then a third exercise that I always do, which is sort of my favorite, it's the most fun, is I do an open brainstorm with both the management team, if there is one, but also one with the staff where we have no management team or no management in the room. And it's an open brainstorm around the question, tell me everything that you don't like about the business, everything, where we are not good at, all the weaknesses,
Yeah.
everything that we could improve. And so, these are generally 2-hour sessions.
Yeah.
And, so with the org chart, the process map, and these open brainstorms, we have a very, very good picture about the current state of the business. Where do we stand right now with everything that's not going right? So once we know the future state, the current state, it's time to gather all the findings that we have and put them in an action list.
Mhm.
So that becomes the action plan. This is very much the same approach as when you go travel. Like, hey, let's go on a trip. What do? You pull your phone, you open Google Maps, you enter your destination, your future state, you enter your current location, that's your current state, and then Google will come up with a roadmap, for how to get from A to B. So same approach. And once we have, this long list of stuff that we want to improve, that we need to change and everything, we can start looking at, okay, what are the things that are important and urgent, the things that we need to do now. And generally I say, don't choose more than 3, 4, maybe 5 topics, because otherwise, we're going to get overwhelmed. People usually get overwhelmed anyway.
Yeah.
So this is where, I'm very clear, don't think that this is going to be a 2-week project. It's not going to be 2 months. Count on a year or 2 years to go through this list. So, but after this whole discovery, stage, we identify, as I said, 3, 4, 5 things where we want to start working on.
Mhm.
And then I help these business owners in implementing these changes.
Right.
So, usually that is like, okay, making some changes in terms of staffing, promoting somebody into a supervisory role,
Yeah.
and reflecting that on the org chart.
So this is a lot like that old proverb, how do you eat an elephant, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. You gotta cut that elephant up in sizable chunks, and and then spread it out over 360 meals.
yeah. So business owners that are looking to answer this question of, how do I grow or how do I manage growth? Obviously, there's some self-reflection, there's some goal setting. It's interesting you
Yep.
talk about the HR piece, and it's not that you're doing HR, but it's interesting that you're having this separate meeting with the staff because I think in a lot of small businesses, they don't have an HR department. They don't have
Oh no.
a person that's specifically trained in that. And so sometimes the employees don't really necessarily feel they may even have a voice, especially with an owner who, takes full responsibility for his business. And, the buck stops with him or her, and they're there to do that. But sometimes it's easy to get bogged down and just, that's the way it is. Sort of. I've heard that many times. That's just the way we do things, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, absolutely. Um, no, these brainstorms, with the staff, they they have been absolutely phenomenal. And the thing that I have that I or the most interesting finding that has come out of these is the fact, and actually I put a post on LinkedIn about this topic a while ago. But when you start talking with the owner and the management team, quite often they point to the staff um, in terms of quite a few things that go wrong.
Right.
It's like, or that they complain about. Yes, we implemented this new process and then they don't follow it, right? That sort of things. So they're sort of pointing to the staff. And then when I sit with the staff and I do this brainstorm, I hear all the things about, well, first of all, I learned that all these guys, or the vast majority of the folks, they're proud of their work. They want to do a good job. They want to do a better job. It's the management that's in the way, of them doing a good job.
Right.
And they can point to all kinds of things where they do everything that they can, but for other reasons, pointing back to the management, it doesn't happen. And so when I gather all this, and then I go back to the management team and I report back on what I have learned, they're surprised. My surprise, of course, is that these guys, they have never talked to each other,
Right.
at this level.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Unfortunate. So, but once we understand that actually, staff management, they all want the same. They wanna, grow the business. They want the business that runs smoothly, like a well-oiled machine. Everybody wants to get rid of the stress. that everybody has. And so yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
And it can be done. But you
What
do
if-
that by, understanding, the issues and having methods in place
yeah.
to bring up things that go wrong.
So when these business owners, they run into these choke points, right? These, impassable, it seems sometimes you have these specific things that you're trying to accomplish and you find you don't have enough time and you're trying to do too many things yourself, as you mentioned, if your name shows up on every single of the org chart. So it
Yeah.
sounds like it's also necessary for the owner to be ready to kind of hear these answers too, right? They have to be kind of ready that they're going to get answers that they need to progress, but even if they don't like them, it's a necessary process. So, sometimes we see owners, we it's our baby, right? We get very defensive about being told, that's not the way you think it is, sort of thing. So,
Hmm.
what part of that in the whole process? What have you seen with successes? What's been that process look like in a successful operation?
You mean
So
success
when
as in,
as in the approach that the owners themselves need to kind of take, what have they had to learn?
well, the owners that actually work with me, they have gotten to that point where they have accepted that they need help,
Right,
right? So personally, my challenge is to get, in front of the owners that are not ready to accept that yet or acknowledge, right? And that's my challenge, because a lot of owners, they don't want to acknowledge that they have a problem, there's also, an astounding number of people that don't understand that there's people like me,
right,
that can help them.
yeah,
They think that they are by themselves. And that's really, really unfortunate, because then, quite often, once, we have a chat together and they learn what I do and my background and everything, they're like, oh my gosh, I should have known you 7 years ago.
yeah,
And, I had one of those discussions last week. And, this is a couple running on itself a successful business, but really they are at the end of of the rope.
hmm
They're this close to calling it quits.
right,
And I look at it and it's like, not needed.
yeah,
This can be fixed.
yeah,
And, some of it actually remarkably quickly, within a matter of weeks or a couple of months,
yeah,
we can make some massive changes in select issues. And staffing, is one of these, that come up quite often. Retention, for example, retention with companies where, you have a revolving door, people come and go. Um, and it's like, why are people leaving? Or, yeah, it seems like we cannot hire people.
yeah.
Okay, why is that? Why is it so hard to find people? And, usually, you know, we can find reasons why that is, why people are not interested. But those are generally things that we can actually change quite rapidly.
There seems to be a lot of crossover too in the service that you provide. It's sort of like going to your. It's funny, you go to your therapist, but you don't tell your therapist anything. They can't help, right? So, that kind of strategy. You talk about some of the coaches in your introduction, and while you're not there to personally coach individuals, but instead focus on the business operations, obviously individuals need to be ready to make that step. So when they've made that step and you start talking about the community, and I think that's the crux of what we're trying to do, especially at Support Local, is let people know, let these businesses know that together as a group, there's a lot more that you can access and a lot more help available. How often do you suggest things like, especially when a business is smaller and maybe they don't have the funds for a full-time employee to fill a particular role? Have you used or do you suggest fractional services, which is kind of maybe a new concept for some of our small business owners?
No, absolutely. Well, yeah, fractional is a new term, but really it means part-time, right? And so absolutely that, part-timers, contractors, those are all solutions. Um, what I do warn against is that, when when you want to grow your business and you want to make it a business, then hiring more help by using contractors doesn't really help you grow the business.
Right.
It just helps you grow revenue, which on itself, may be fine, if it makes more money, but it doesn't really grow your business. You are still the center point and you're just using other people. The only way, in my humble opinion, to grow the business is to hire staff.
Right.
And have them dedicated. Contractors, they may find another client, tomorrow and say, hey, the other one is paying more, I'm gone. Staff, you can train them. They're going to be part of your business when you coach them, mentor them in the proper way, and they will help you grow your business. And that's really what you want. But at times, yes, fractional services, part-timers, contractors, they can help you, overcome certain thresholds. So, for example, CFO, most smaller businesses, they don't need a full-time CFO. There's no point.
Right.
So fractional CFO makes total sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as part of, so yes, I'm not a CFO, I'm not a marketing specialist, I'm not a sales specialist, I'm not an HR specialist. But, as I mentioned, when we do this vision for the business, we do talk about marketing and sales and operations and finance and HR and everything.
Right.
And so in terms of the goals that we have for the business, all these functions, they come up. And so whenever we feel a need, also in terms of the org chart, okay, yeah, we need some help, here in this area to offload, some of the, or to reduce the reliance, of the business on the owner. Okay, let's look for a fractional salesperson. And
So
that's where, you have a network, I have my own network.
yeah.
Last year I started my own referral group. It's called the Blue Collar Business Consultants of BC, or BC3. And in there I have, a number of these type of specialists. And so when people need help in certain areas,
Yeah.
I can bring them in, to help the owner on that particular thing. So as an example, quite often what I find is that, people don't have proper employee contracts, or they don't have a employee handbook,
Right.
and those are very, very important. So I have, 1, 2 guys that can help them, create those.
Yeah. And now, of course, part of the Ask the Expert series, there's even a larger database to draw from. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, it's like when you go to the doctor and you sit in front of the doctor and he says, you need to change your diet and you need to do this and you need to do that. And, here's a prescription. But then there's a specific issue that he's not qualified to handle, or is outside
Yeah.
of his scope of expertise. And so now he sends you to a specialist. So it sounds a lot like what you're doing is, but we start with the doctor, right? We make that first appointment and we go to see him, and we start the analysis process. So if a business owner says, okay, I'm at that stage, I'm ready to grow, or you also deal with succession questions as well too. I'm ready to either sell the business or maybe, keep it going through another process or whatever that happens to be. What can I do as a business owner? What homework can I do before I come see you?
Pick up that phone.
That's easy. Love it.
Don't think about it. No, absolutely. And that's what you do. There's no homework, just phone me up and have a chat.
Perfect.
And we'll talk about the concerns that you have, what keeps you up at night, and what can I do to help.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add, one thing to this, in case people may misinterpret this, because you mentioned, yes, the doctor, and then I sent people to a specialist. That doesn't mean that I do this whole discovery thing. We create this list and then I say you're on your own, right? So I support these, owners. My second client ever, I've been working with him for over 3 years now. I mean, yes, we don't see each other every week, it's sporadic, but we still check in with each other. So, after the whole discovery phase, that we do, you know, we follow up where I help, these clients implement some of these things, process improvements or SOPs or standard operating procedures or
Right.
checklists and training, a training program, job descriptions. There's a lot of stuff that I help them with implementing, and I'm not like, you're on your own.
Right.
I'm helping them with getting to that success point. But
Yeah.
generally, over the course of months and months, yes, our collaboration will decline, and will turn into maybe one session every month, hour and a half, just to check in and being a sounding board for the owner. Because one of the problems of that business owners have, they have nobody else to talk about their their business problems with. Nobody understands what they're talking about, and or they would understand, but they can't because of confidential issues.
Right.
So then I'm there as a third party objective um, person that they can talk to, and usually the owner, they talk for like 50 minutes, and I talk for 10.
Yeah.
So a
And I
little
think
bit
I
of
think we all need that as a small business. We need that sounding board. We need somebody that
yeah,
we know can at least point us in the right direction. If using the doctor analogy again, if they can't write the prescription themselves, then they know what to do to
yeah,
address it. So
yeah.
why small businesses? So obviously your skills could be related to a number of major industries, et cetera, et cetera. Why work with small businesses?
It's well, so yeah, I could probably work with very large businesses, and actually, in all honesty, we look up at large businesses, um, thinking that they are very sophisticated. In reality, a lot of them are actually not. Um, but I just, larger businesses, they do have the advantage of having the money to hire, more educated people and more specialists and everything. So generally, they have more in-house knowledge. I simply like smaller businesses and working with the business owner directly because, small business or SMEs in general, they're like 90 something percent of the landscape, the industrial landscape. In Canada, it's being talked about a lot, often for years and years, that productivity here is relatively low compared to other developed countries. And, when I go into, manufacturing, shops, for example, you see right away why that is. And, from my perspective, it's like, that's not needed. We can make some changes there to boost that productivity
Hmm.
and start changing the numbers for Canada.
Yeah.
Um, with a small business, you can come up with a process change, do it, and you will start seeing change tomorrow. With larger companies, it can take for, I don't know, weeks or months, or it will never happen. So you have these very quick turnarounds. You have an owner that, like, after a couple of months, they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I see light at the end of this tunnel. And that is just so rewarding to see.
Yeah.
And so that's why I prefer, to work with smaller businesses, because the turnaround time is just short.
I think that's a good point. That's something I've appreciated too about small businesses is that when a small business owner decides that this is what they want to do, they can just do it, right? They don't
Yep.
have to go through half a dozen committees and run it up the board and wait for a vote back, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah,
No.
it can be very rewarding.
Yeah. And you work with them, as persons, So recently I worked with several. It was either husband and wife or brother and sister,
Yeah.
and they take all this business stress, to home, and it's just sad. And so if I can help change that around a little bit, then it just makes me happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So once again, we're very excited to have Jaap part of our Ask the Expert series, and appreciate your insights. We look forward to more chats down the road. And again, on this page, feel free to reach out and just do what he says. Just pick up the phone. Start there.
Absolutely. Or send me an email.
Email works too. There you go.
Yeah. Actually, email actually works better.
Okay,
So
so we're gonna revise that. Email, and
it's
then we can start the phone calls.
well, the thing with you know how this goes, with 99% of the phone calls that we receive are scams.
Yes, I know.
And so sending an email is actually better.
It's gotten harder, that's for sure. That's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Excellent. So one way or another, get a hold of them and go from there.
And we'll chat. We'll chat.
All right. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Rob.